Welcome to the College Football Bros. I'm Michael Newman.
I'm Ryan Newman.
And I'm Trey Newman.
All right, we are talking about a potential 12-team playoff in this episode because a subcommittee of the College Football Playoff concluded that this was the proposal they were going to bring to the group. And this is just the first step in the process, so it's by no means official, but at least kind of looks like it's heading that way. So Trey, what exactly is this format that they've laid out?
Yeah, so you've first got the 6 highest ranked conference champions. It's not Power 5 guaranteed. Any of the conference champions, the 6 highest ranked get in. The 6 remaining spots are the highest ranked teams by the committee. So while it's unlikely, there are still ways that a Power 5 champ could potentially be left out if they happen to fall behind 6 other conference champions and they're not in the top 12 otherwise. I think
in 2020, people have talked about that would have happened. Oregon would have been left out because Coastal Carolina and Cincinnati would have finished ahead of them. I know 2020 was a weird year, but yeah.
It's not far-fetched that it could happen again, of course. But and then as far as kind of the structure of how it would look, the top 4 would receive a first-round bye. Then the remaining 8, 5 through 12, would play each other with the higher-ranked teams. So essentially, teams ranked 5 through 8 would get to host a game, and that would occur during the 2-week period after the conference championships. And then those winners would advance and be matched with those top 4 teams, would be welcomed into the field, and they'd be playing in traditional bowl games for the quarterfinals and semifinals, and then the national title would remain at a neutral site as it is now. The quarterfinals or the round of 8 would be on 2 consecutive days around New Year's Day. And then the dates of the semis and title aren't in stone yet, but you can see it would probably be around the 8th and the 15th, roughly, getting into mid to late January.
Okay, so be sure to let us know below in the comments what your thoughts are on this proposed 12-team playoff. I know some people are staunchly against it. I don't even quite know what your guys' opinion is yet, so we'll get into that. But yeah, let us know in the comments. We'd like to hear your thoughts. So let's go with the pros. We're going through the pros and cons here. We'll start with the positives. So let's just kind of throw a bunch out and discuss them. So Ryan, what's one pro that you have of this 12-team format?
First one I'm going to go with is just the fact that group of 5 teams will actually have a legit chance to make it, right? They haven't had a chance. Even at 4, there's no chance that they make it, like just not happening. So 12, and it guarantees 1 because of the conference champion, right? So you have 5,
Yep.
You have the 6 conference champs. So 1 will definitely be in. So then that just, boom, it could be more, right? But that's a positive. The group of 5 will get a shot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just going to make it more fun to follow the group of 5 conferences because the New Year's Six Bowl bid is getting less and less valuable. This past year, players sat out that Cincinnati-Georgia game. It really, it was a good game, but
same with Florida, Oklahoma, and you name it. Another positive is there's incentive to play late in the season because the first 4 teams get a bye. That's very important. And then even if you're not one of those first 4 teams, the next 4 you have incentive to play because you would get to host a home game in that first round. So because you really needed a way to incentivize these teams in the final week, especially those top teams that know they're going to be in the top 12. You need to incentivize them to play hard in those last few games so that it makes it more compelling, more competitive, and whatnot. So there's a lot more at stake if you don't sit out.
Yeah, you don't want teams resting starters at the end. And they really thought about this a lot. Even if you don't like the 12-team format, I'm trying to poke holes with, teams are going to sit out players here and there, and maybe it'll happen, but the incentives are very good because I even thought, hey, what if Alabama is 12-0 going into the conference championship, and hey, they're going to be top 4 even if they lose. Well, the way they've set it up is in order to get that first round bye, you have to be a conference champion. It's not just the top 4 teams, it's the top 4 conference champions. So you can't just punt it away in the SEC title. So it's interesting. Now that's weird for Notre Dame because Notre Dame's not in a conference, so under the proposed thing that they
Yeah.
have. Notre Dame, the highest they can finish is 5th, but
They'll work
seems
that
like
out, I
need-
think.
need to be adjusted.
yeah, we'll see. But anyway, interesting.
Yeah.
Another pro I have is just kind of an easy one, is that watching this playoff is going to be very fun. With the current system, I mean, sure, the bowl games can be fun, and then the other New Year's Six games, but year by year they get kind of less interesting. I feel like more focus is on that playoff. The other big bowl games, players are sitting out. So, I'm just pumped to watch 11 high-quality teams go up against each other. Or not,
Yep.
12, sorry, teams,
11
but
games.
11 games
Yep.
with those teams. It's going to be fun to watch.
Is it 11 games, even though they have like buys?
It's 11 because there's 12 teams, and 11 teams have to lose at some point. So
Oh, even with buys. I knew it was like the NCAA tournament. It's always like,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
all right, fair enough. Okay. For me, I think a plus is just that, more teams are going to be alive just later in the year. I mean, you can get knocked out pretty darn quick from the whole thing there. If you have 2 losses, like, you're pretty much done. You ain't going anywhere as far as national playoff type thing. So this one with 12, if you're sitting there in the top 20, late in the year, you still feel like you might have a shot at it if if things bounce your way. So a lot more folks will have their dreams still alive.
Yeah, and like you say, because like even rivalry week at that last week of the season before even conference championships, it's not maybe as compelling for some of these games as it has been in years past. But like you said, those rivalry games are going to be so meaningful. Like Oregon and Oregon State. If you got Oregon at number 10 or whatever, and they're playing Oregon State, Oregon cannot afford to slip up. Where years past they could say, "Oh, we could technically maybe lose and then still win," but like the conference championship, like it's a must win. It's going to make those games even more fun to watch.
Because the big criticism of these of expansion is that it makes the regular season matter less, which we'll get to when we get to the cons. In some ways, that's true, but in some ways, it's the opposite. There's going to be more games with playoff implications because more teams are getting in.
Yep, exactly. And then I guess probably my final positive that I see is there will be less complaint. Well, there's always going to be complaining, but I think there will be less complaining from fans and media about teams not getting the opportunity. Ryan, you mentioned the G5 will have an opportunity. At this point, if you feel slighted at number 13, you're not going to win anyways. It's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, and you lost probably 3 or 4 games. So
It's like the 69th tournament team in the NCAA tournament. Like, they'll still complain a little bit, but they always will. But it's like, come on, guys. Let's be real.
Okay, my next pro is that we're gonna have new blood in the playoff. Like everyone's been complaining that it's Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, those teams every year, and those teams will still be in it, and they're really kind of guaranteed to be in it now with expansion. But there'll also be other teams, those teams that had kind of out of nowhere great seasons, the Utah, Baylor, Iowa State,
Carolina.
teams like that will be in.
Yeah.
So they may not win it, of course. They're very, very unlikely, but at least they got a shot. They're in there.
It doesn't require a 3-year process of like building yourself up to make it to a playoff. Like so if you're on a lower level squad. I mean, if you're in a G5, of course, but you don't have to go undefeated. You don't have to go with the 1 loss. So it's possible for those teams to make it. I'm as a team that as a fan of a Nebraska team that doesn't ever do that. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Any other pros we have?
It's just more games.
I like
more games to watch.
I like the on-campus playoff games. Those are going to be super
That's
intense.
true.
Again, if this happens, we're kind of assuming that it does in this episode. But
Get some, and it'll be like early December. Get some cold weather games in some instances.
okay, let's move on to the cons. Trey, what's your first con for the 12-team playoff?
My first one is the rematches. I know it can happen now, but it's just a lot. It's a little bit more likely with this expanded field. You could have scenarios where teams play each other twice in close proximity, like the SEC championship. Alabama, Georgia, and then maybe they'll play a couple weeks later in the playoff. Maybe they deserve to. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. Or even there's scenarios where a conference title is a rematch. So like Texas and Oklahoma, they've played a couple times before. Maybe they both end up in the final 12 and they play a third time.
Yeah.
It's unlikely, but it's possible where you'd see maybe even a 3-game series.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one. And if one team loses the first 2 and then wins the third, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. One of my cons is that it's just kind of like basically every Power 5 team can lose 2 games and still be pretty much guaranteed to get in. And most of the time, we're going to have 3-loss teams, or even multiple 3-loss teams in the playoff, which just sort of goes against the history of college football where, you know, that whole every game matters mantra. You know, if you're a team with real championship aspirations, 1 game can take you out, or even now in the playoff era, 2 games can take you out. That's not going to be the case anymore. So those big upsets are going to have less kind of implications potentially, like when Ohio State in consecutive years, you know, they lost to Iowa one year that took them out. They lost to Purdue. That took them out of the playoff. And that was huge. Now it'll still be a fun upset, but it's like, okay, now Ohio State is going to host a home playoff game instead of having a bye, you know, just not as big of an impact.
Yeah, that's definitely one. It's the regular season games are a little bit diluted. They're still
and I
important.
think to Michael's point is like, does a 3 or 4 loss team, you know, deserve the right? We're not saying we're the authority to say that, but it kind of diminishes that aspect a little bit.
Well, yeah, there'll be some 3-loss every now and then, for sure.
It'll happen. I think. I mean, I just quickly kind of look back through the years, but there were some years there were like 3-loss teams that were in the top.
And they'll gripe
especially now with the amount of games.
They'll gripe when that 3 or 4 loss team in the first round loses by 30. It's like, well, that's just the way it is.
That's my next con, is just that there's going to be teams that just really have no shot of winning it all. You know, I mean, the 12th place team, you know, is going to be a far, far cry from some of these teams that are just so far ahead of them that it's just, I mean, it's cool they're there, I guess. You know, that's kind of some playoff systems, but college football is a little different, that they just never really have those, where it's just like, okay, this is cool, it's a game, but oof, they just really have no chance of winning.
Well, even the past, like Notre Dame this past year didn't feel like they really had any chance, and they were the 4th team.
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's what I was kind of leading to my point is about, and to add on to that, Ryan, it's just, you look at the last few years, like I was kind of looking at some of the metrics. A 12 seed in their first game against that 5 seed would be, I mean, anywhere from like a 7 to 14 point underdog. Obviously, it depends on the scenario. And then even if they won that game, they pull the upset, they'll be an even bigger underdog to the number 1 team. And just to latch onto the point you just mentioned, is we've already seen the disparity between 1 and 4 at this point. I know that's just been kind of recent history, but if that trend kind of continues, then those 12 seeds will even be a much wider gap.
Okay, all of these are kind of along the same lines, but my con is that this system is going to make it less likely that you crown the best team the national champion. And throughout college football history, almost every year you can kind of look back and say, yeah, they were the best team. Like, they put forth the best resume that year. But now there's going to be eventually, it won't happen every year. Of course, often it'll be a team that goes 15-1 or 16-0 or whatever. But there's going to be a 2 or 3 loss team that wins the title. Maybe they lost a few games early and got hot, but I don't know. I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea that, oh yeah, they won because they, you know, got hot in a few games, but really the best team all season was Team X. You know, that, I think that's kind of a con.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that. For me, another con would be, I feel like if we go to this system, then teams would be less inclined to schedule difficult non-conference games at the beginning of the year, as far as like wear and tear, injuries. I don't feel like there is a need, and they're going to add more games here at the end, right? You're going to play at least 3 games here at the end, so I think it will not encourage teams to play as many difficult non-conference matchups. And then what are you going to do as far as conference games? Is like the Big Ten going to go back down to 8 games in the Pac-12? Are you going to knock that back down since you're going to have an extended, playoff?
Yeah, that's one of the other cons you bring up there is that potentially a team could play 17 games, and that brings up issues with player safety or injuries. I guess the longer the season is, the more likely injuries help determine your national champion. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's one con.
That's why I think they would do less big marquee non-conference games. We'll just, hey, we'll play a patsy, rest starters a little bit, and just come out of here okay.
Okay.
Maybe I could see both sides to that.
Yeah.
I don't really have any more cons. I think we kind of sound more like old dogs, but that's not the way I want to come across. But
it's kind of exciting, though. Overall,
it is.
It's kind of exciting.
All right, I do have a couple more cons though I want to throw out there. One is that the top teams don't get home playoff games. It seems like home playoff games is a really, really cool thing, and the top 4 teams don't get that. I mean, a bye is obviously more valuable in terms of winning the championship, but I don't know.
True.
It'd be cool to have that experience. True. And I think games between top-ranked teams, whether it's the non-conference or wherever, will matter less. Like this year, Clemson versus Georgia. The loser of that in our current system, sure, they could still make it, but their margin for error is very, very thin. They maybe can't lose one more game or they'd be out. So it's a really big game in terms of who wins or loses. It could determine whether they make the playoff. In a 12-team playoff, it's like, okay, maybe they'll be a lower seed, but we still probably think both Clemson and Georgia are going to make it. So the loss doesn't sting quite as much.
They could lose twice more probably and still have a very good chance.
That's very true. They could. I don't know if that's true for Clemson because their schedule, but if they win the ACC,
they have a very good chance. Yeah. Well, yeah.
So yeah.
There's cons, no doubt about it.
I'm trying to see if I have.
I'm kind of glad they didn't go for 16 though. I like the 12 setup better than the 16 for sure.
Well, okay, let's just brings us to our final question, and let us know if there's any more cons or pros that we didn't get to. This is not, of course, an exhaustive list, but yeah, final question. So, do you like this idea, as opposed to anything, just compared to the 4-team or the 8-team or 12? Like, do you like it, Ryan?
I now that we've decided to go playoff, I like it. Just because 4 is just not good. I don't see the 4 as a playoff. It's just weird to me. So if we're gonna leave the 2, if we're gonna leave that, then I think I could have bought 8. 8 would have been good. But I really do like the way they've set it up here and their suggestions about all the ways it's gonna happen. How it's gonna flick. Like the home teams will get some 5-3. We'll get a home games, and you got some buys. Like it set it up well with the incentives of making sure you want to play all your games, right? And not just rest players because you're in. So I do like it. At this point, I guess I hope they do switch from 4 to 12 just because I don't like 4. So yeah, I guess, hey, why not? I'm on board. I'm going to watch it regardless. I'm going to love it, but
yeah,
I'm a college football junkie, but yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's hard to say for me. There's trade-offs. I think like we said, overall, there's going to be more games with playoff implications during the regular season, so I think that's good. But like I said, those top-tier games might lose a little bit of their luster because those teams are going to make the playoff regardless. I know seeding is affected, but and I don't love the idea of 3-loss teams getting in. I'm not sure that they deserve a shot there, but overall, I don't hate it. I think maybe I'd have to think harder about this maybe, but I think maybe like 8, or if there's a 10 out there, that might be even better, but I don't hate the 12.
Yeah, at first when I heard 12, I was initially kind of discouraged and wasn't a fan, but the more I've read about it and dug into it, I think I've come around, just because I think the way college football has trended the last couple of years with all those opt-outs in the last few games, especially the bowl games, this is going to add a few more big-time games. It's going to cut down a few bowl games where there would have been those opt-outs, and that was a pattern that was only getting worse. So this kind of addresses it a little bit. And like I said earlier, I really do think it'll make rivalry week and conference championship week kind of feel like part of the playoffs. So we're going to get, a solid 4 weeks or so of entertaining high stake football. But I do agree on the other side of, in terms of purely and solely determining a champ, it might be a little much, but overall I've come around and I think I'll get on board.
Okay. All right. That'll do it for this episode of the College Football Bros. Be sure to subscribe if you like the show. We are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. We're getting there. I think we're up over 850 now. So, thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
You've been watching the College Football Bros. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube and in your podcast app for college football content all year round. For bonus episodes and access to our Discord chat, join our Patreon at patreon.com/collegefootballbros. Thanks for watching.